Here's a segment from a recent Gun Talk radio episode. You can listen to all the Gun Talk radio podcasts however you tune in, or check out guntalk.com for more. I was just out at Thunder Ranch in Oregon and doing a media event with some cool gear with the folks from Leupold and Smith & Wesson. Joining me right now to talk about that and some of the things that I learned, John Snodgrass, from Leupold.
Yeah, so we had the DeltaPoint Micro.
DeltaPoint Micro, because you had the DeltaPoint, right?
Yep, we've got the DeltaPoint Pro, which is a full-size reflex style sight.
Right.
And then what we were shooting out here at Thunder Ranch was the DeltaPoint Micro, which is geared kind of more towards the smaller concealed carry style handguns. And it's an enclosed system. What that means is, on the DeltaPoint Pro, the LED emitter is mounted behind the lens, and there's an air gap between the lens and the emitter. So environmental conditions like rain, snow, mud can get in there and affect your dot. With the DeltaPoint Micro being enclosed, it's got glass on both ends, so you have less concerns about those environmental conditions affecting the performance of the dot.
It's also really small, which works really well in the small guns. We had it on the Smith, the Shield Plus, which is a kind of a perfect size for that. But look, I mean, and you're kind of the daddy of this whole project, the DeltaPoint Micro. At the same time, you've heard every one of the, I don't know if you would call it a complaint, but the pushbacks, people just being reluctant, mainly, and this is my belief, mainly by people who never shot it, never seen it even. So when they look at it, they go, well, that's tiny, that's not going to work. What do you tell them?
Well, it is very unconventional compared to most modern red dot sights. So like you said, it is very small. It was kind of designed with concealed carry and the compact and subcompact pistols in mind. Now, it does work great on full-size guns also, but that was kind of the design intent, was to keep it as small and as low profile as possible for concealed carry.
Well, I'll raise my hand and say I was skeptical. Think, okay, how's this going to work? And we get up there on the line, and you bring the gun up, and you go, oh, there's the red dot. I could do that. So we shot it with a dot. It was easy. It was quick. Both eyes open. Just shoot the darn thing. It's mounted low. It's right there in the rear sight dovetail, so it's the same height as your rear sight. So if you bring your gun up the way you normally would for iron sights, you see the dot.
Yep. Yeah, that's the great thing about it is if you're someone who hasn't shot a lot of red dot sights and you're not used to how you kind of have to change your presentation of the pistol in order to find your dot in a bigger reflex style sight, the DeltaPoint Micro works really well because it is the same sight plane as the factory iron sights. And in fact, we designed this thing where if for some reason your battery fails while you're carrying it, it actually acts as its own backup iron sight. You can use it as a peep sight. We've also got some features built in there, so you can use it as a 3-dot sight. So there's a lot of versatility with it. But yeah, it is the same sight plane as the factory iron sights. So if you're old like me and you grew up being taught that you always look for your front sight, if you draw the pistol and present it the way you normally do, the dot just sits there right on top of that front sight. So it's a little easier for people who haven't shot red dots a lot.
I'll add my testimony to that because we actually turned the dot off for a little while and we're shooting. And we're shooting at 5 yards, 7 yards, maybe even 15 yards. And then we go, oh, yeah, see that steel target up on top of the hill there? And that was, what would you say, 30, 35 yards away from us? Something like that?
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good estimate.
Okay. And we're swinging this thing and hitting steel with the red dot turned off, just looking through the sight. Now, one of the things we did is, we shot it on the paper first, on the cardboard, said, okay, figure out where it shoots when you use it as a ghost ring, because it may not be exactly the same as where the dot was. And for me, impact was a little high, so I had to hold, call it 5-6 inches low at 35 yards. But I was consistent in having no trouble at all hitting steel. And for a self-defense gun, 35 yards, if you can hit it with the dot turned off, that's fabulous. With the dot turned on, you could do even better.
Yeah, it does work really well. It's pretty accurate at longer distances because we've got that nice crisp 3.0 MOA dot in there. And with that smaller housing, it tends to bracket your target a little bit. I mean, you want to be threat focused. That's the great thing about a red dot is you really don't have to look at the sight. You want to be threat focused and shoot when the dot appears on your target. But the DeltaPoint Micro does work very well in both the accuracy department and the ease of use department for sure.
It's available for Glock and the Smith, but you've had it available for the Glock for a little while, haven't you?
Yeah, both models launched at the same time at SHOT Show last year.
Okay.
There's a lot of questions about why did you just do Glock and why did you just do Smith? And at the time we started developing the product, those were by far the two most popular pistols on the market. And then also just, they've been very consistent in the geometry of the slide and where the rear sight dovetail is located. So that just allowed us to hit as many or the most popular guns as possible without having to do a lot of changes. Yeah.
And on Glocks, this will work on everything from the Gen 1 to the Gen 5.
That's correct. Yeah. So, if you're someone who bought a Glock many years ago and are getting to that point where maybe the iron sights aren't as easy to see, it's a great transition, very value-minded too, because you don't have to worry about having your slide cut or updated for a red dot. You just knock the rear sight out of the dovetail and the DeltaPoint Micro mounts right in that spot.
How about holsters? The DeltaPoint Micro work for most holsters?
It does. It'll work with most holsters you already have. It just mounts in the rear sight dovetail. So anything that you have currently for your Glock, your Smith & Wesson M&P, it should work with it as long as it doesn't have a real high-rise front on the holster.
Okay, sounds good. Hey, let's pivot for a second, because one of the hot things, obviously, and Leupold's right there with it, is the long-range shooting, and Leupold's got a whole, not just a line, got multiple lines of rifle scopes. And you're one of those guys. You like to pull the trigger and bang steel way out there, don't you?
Yeah, it's always fun to challenge yourself and see just how consistent and how accurate you can be at further and further distances, for sure.
The question I always try to bring to people is there is long-range shooting and then there's long-range hunting. One is fun and one is controversial. How do you explain that to people?
I always like to just tell people, you have to keep the ethics in mind and don't take shots that you aren't able to repeatedly hit at distances that you're comfortable with, right? So not trying to tell anybody that there's a specific distance you should never shoot farther than, but definitely stay within the realm of your capabilities and practice as much as you can to improve those capabilities with the tools that are available.
I mean, I know people that probably 200 is their limit, and I know people that realistically, on game, they're probably good at 600 yards day in and day out. I'm probably not that person, but the part of it is I don't compete in long range competition all the time. And I think maybe that's part of what you need to have to do to get to that level.
Long range competitions are definitely more available and a great way to improve your skills and test your abilities. And anytime you can get more time behind the gun and more time on the trigger, that's just going to help. Practice makes perfect.
How does the custom dial system like Leupold has, the dial-up system, how has that changed the game?
As far as game changing, it's kind of, when you look at the technology that's available out there and how great the improvements have been just in the performance of the bullets and the rifles and tolerances and the ability to be able to, break out a computer that's going to tell you exactly how far you need to dial in order to make accurate shots at distance. The CDS system just kind of takes all that and rolls it up where basically what we're doing is giving you a tool that's done the math for you, given the environmental conditions and the ballistic conditions that you've sent us for the dial. So purchaser buys the scope, they send us what bullet they're using, what the muzzle velocity is, average altitude, average temperature for where they're going to be using it, and we'll build you a custom dial that matches the drop of your bullet in 50-yard increments.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That makes it about as easy as it can be, really.
Yeah, at that point, you just range it, and if it's 400 yards, then you would just dial up to the 4 on the dial, and you should be able to hold dead on. And, we're not talking bench rest quality, but we're definitely going to put you in the size of the kill zone as long as we get good, accurate information from the user on what they're shooting and what their conditions are.
Okay. Another question I'm sure you get all the time. The difference between, say, the military-style scopes that you have and the consumer-style scopes.
With us, it just really comes down to a feature set. All of our rifle scopes, whether they're, the military, the Mark V style scopes, or our VX series of scopes, all of our scopes go through similar testing, and they're all held to the same standards as far as durability goes. Now, with the military stuff, we do a little bit of extra testing as far as environmentals and water pressure and stuff like that. But as far as a baseline, all of our rifle scopes are held to a pretty stringent standard.
Are scopes just generally better when you look at the Leupold scopes today than they were 20, 30 years ago?
Yes, I mean, you can say that with just about everything, right? I mean,
Sure.
again, we kind of touched on the improvements in technology and machining and just capabilities to hold tighter and tighter tolerances. You know, we've gotten better with the coatings that we can put on the lenses to improve how we manage the light. Our tolerances on our adjustments are able to be held way tighter than you say, 20, 30 years ago. So the capabilities in general of what we need to make the scopes has gotten better, and therefore the scopes themselves have improved at the same levels.
And of course, you've got the famous Leupold warranty on everything.
Yep, lifetime warranty. We like to say that we're pretty proud of guaranteeing performance, not warranting failure.
I like it. John Snodgrass, thank you so much for your time. Albuquerque, let's go talk with Ryan there, who had an interesting thing pop up. What happened, Ryan?
Hey, Tom. I'm a longtime listener and really enjoy your show. Hey, so I had a self-defense sort of situation last year here at one of our local malls. Mm-hmm. My family and I, we were eating lunch in the car and kind of hear this pop, pop, pop over my shoulder, look over, and sure enough, there's a guy hopping up and down, shooting into a car about 30 yards away from us. And, a lot of things go through your mind real quick when you start seeing something like that. The first thing was, hey, is he shooting at me? No, he's not shooting at me. Okay, how do I get away from this as quick as possible? Mm-hmm. And, that's when I went back to my emergency driving training and just tried to get away from that guy as quick as possible in the car. I'm honking at people, flashing lights, and of course not everybody saw what I saw, so right. Not all the cars are getting out of the way. And it was really it was pretty intense, as you can imagine. But the weirdest thing, and this probably won't surprise you at all, but the weirdest thing that happened was as I'm driving away, as I'm trying to put buildings and miles between me and this guy that's shooting into a car, mm-hmm. I'm watching people outside the mall, and some of them are running, some of them are trying to get into the mall, but the vast majority of them have their phones out. Yes. And they're filming it.
Yes, because they're idiots. And Darwin is always at work here. And this is, people are now, they've actually conditioned themselves that no matter what it is, you see it through the lens of your camera on your phone. And it's like you're not even actually there. If you're shooting video of it, it's not real. And so, yes, you're not surprising me in the slightest. You are confirming that I am very disappointed in the human race at this point. And some people are just stupid. People need to program themselves of, if that happens, you don't want to be there. And when I say you don't want to be there, you want to be like Ryan. You want to crank that car up and beat feet and get out of there.
Yeah, and that was my primary concern. As soon as I knew that it wasn't, we saw on the news after the fact that it unfortunately it was a gang-related shooting. A young man died, and that's really horrible. But as soon as I knew that he's not trying to shoot a bunch of people, he's just shooting into this car, then it was, let's get away from here. Because I always carry, but I don't want to get into any sort of situation that I don't need to.
No, you did the exact right thing. All you want to do is put some distance between you and him. Did you have any trouble identifying the shots as being gunshots?
Not. Maybe for half a second. I thought, oh, somebody's car backfired, but then there's 3-4 more shots after that, and I'm like, that's a little more like handgun fire at that point.
You're right. The cadence is, and it's not fireworks. Well, look, thank you so much for reporting that, for sharing the experience, and for letting people think about that. And maybe people can start processing, okay, and you got to, and what ifs? What if this happens? What will I do? What will I tell my wife and my daughter? How do we react? I tell them, get down. I'm going to drive away. And look, once you've gotten 100 yards away, you don't need to drive fast anymore. It's done. You're away from it, whatever it is. But good on you. You ever had anything like that happen, or maybe even just a weird hinky situation where you're looking at people going, that doesn't look right?